guys, welcome back to another episode of the Filmaholic here. This is our One Tree Hill rewatch. If you've been watching, we just finished season 4. We finished the high school years, guys. We are past that now. We are on to season 5. And this is a soft reboot or revamp of the show, if you will. It's the 5th season. It's definitely a continuation for us fans, but it's also, if you had started season 5 and hadn't watched the first 4 seasons, you could have jumped into it then. You wouldn't have to go back and watch those first 4 seasons of the show. Although, definitely, and this goes for films that you can jump into and not watch the ones before that, the emotional impact is not going to be there. It's kind of like a Force Awakens impact, right? So you could have watched Force Awakens without watching the original Star Wars films, definitely the prequels, all that, but that emotional impact for the relationships, for the things that happen, the decisions that are made to the show, when Dan shows up in the 503, all these different impacts would not be there if you hadn't watched those original seasons. But we are into season 5 now. This episode aired January 8th, 2008. Now, it's clear to point out here that the last episode, the season finale of season 4, aired June 2007. So they went a long time without a new season. They did not come back in the fall like they usually would. They came back mid-season in January. So when shows are coming back from their winter hiatus to pick up the second half of their season, One Tree Hill is starting their 5th season. And I actually think this was a smart move and was the right decision at the time for season 5. Although, it was disappointing having to wait that long before we got a new season. Given that there was this time jump in the show, given that happened, I definitely think it made sense to have that big gap in between the 2 seasons. It made, when we came back for season 5, it made you really feel like you had been apart from these characters for that long of time, even though obviously it wasn't 4 years, but you feel it. To me, this season would be based in 2010 because the last season would have been based in 2006. So when we come back here, it is 2010, and we don't have a clear answer, and this is something that bugs me as we move forward in the show, that we never have a clear answer of time periods. You have to figure it out yourself, and I feel like I've figured it out for the most part myself, and that's right, based off of Jamie's birthday. Pretty much moving forward, you can base the episodes of when they're supposed to be around Jamie's birthday, because we know Jamie's born in June. His birthday, he does have his 5th birthday party in season 5, episode 15 when we get there. So we know this has to be before that. I'm not exactly sure yet where my decision of where this episode takes place, but I'm thinking probably Haley's starting as a teacher, so it either has to be the beginning of the school year, or maybe she started about halfway through the semester in, and so maybe she came in October. Does it really matter? No, but that's just me talking about the show and analyzing it here, where everything is based. I also want to point out here that this is around the time that I started going to Wilmington and actually being a part of watching filming, being there, seeing everything happen. The first time I went to Wilmington was with my dad. It was summer 2007, so they had just started filming season 5. I'm not really sure, I can't remember what episode they were filming, but it was one of the first 3 episodes. But we went on a weekend. At the time, I didn't know that they didn't film on the weekends because I was 12. But we went, it was a Saturday, and we spent the day in Wilmington before we drove down to a different location to spend the night. But so that was the first time I actually got to tour Screen Gym Studios, which was awesome. The first time I actually was on a set. That was really cool. But what also was cool about that is that, this was summer 2007, so there was a long time before the show was, season 5 was coming out, and I got to see some behind the scenes stuff. I mean, I got to go into Mouth's apartment at that time, which, that was a new location in itself that we hadn't seen, that no one else had seen anything about, which it's Mouth's apartment, so do we really care that much? No, but it was cool getting to go there. I got to go in Mouth's apartment, I got to go in the high school, I got to go in Lucas's house, although they would not let us go into his bedroom because that would give away spoilers for the season. Pictures of probably him and Lindsay, the fact that no Peyton pictures are around, his book on the wall, all that stuff. So we couldn't go in his room. Same thing with the high school. We couldn't go in Whitey's office, which is now Lucas's office, because that would give away spoilers. So different spots that would give away significant spoilers for where the characters are in the season, we couldn't go into. Um, and and this is something that I was thinking about. I can't remember if we went in this or not. I'm pretty sure we went into Dan and Deb's house, that they still had that set summer of 2007. I'm almost positive that I went in that set, because it was the only time that I could have went into it. So if it wasn't there then I just like imagined it. But I'm pretty sure we went in that set, because I think I remember going into the kitchen. It might have not, it might have been a set that they had took part of it down. We definitely did not go upstairs in Dan and Deb's house, because if you know, like, they're not actually like 2-story houses on the set. So like they have the bottom floor and they have the top floor, and they're usually like next to each other. And sometimes they don't even have a whole top floor. It's just like a character's bedroom and part of a hallway. So we definitely didn't see any bedrooms of that house, Deb's house. But I'm pretty sure that we went into the kitchen and the living room. It happened. I'm going to say it happened. I went in that filming location. So we went to Deb's house. We went to the high school, Lucas's house, and Mouth's apartment. So we went all those different locations, those 4, the first time I toured Screen Gems. And I'll cover each time that I toured, because I went 3 or 4 times. I definitely went to Screen Gems and did this tour, because each time you go, you get to see some different locations, different sets. So like, that was the only time that I went that I got to see Lucas's house. But I got to see the high school, I think, twice at least, not to mention the time that I was extra on the finale. So, but that was in a different location, a different studio, soundstage, different soundstage at Screen Gem Studio. But yeah, so this is pretty much where my true One Tree Hill journey begins, as part of me like going to Wilmington twice a year, twice a season, I guess you would say, to visit, because with season 5 we went twice, season 6, yeah, every year from season 5 through the end of the show, I went at least twice per season to watch. As we go into season 6, it gets into me watching filming. Season 6 finale is when I really truly got to watch filming. But beginning of season 6 was when I truly actually got to meet an actor I met, Paul Johansson, which we'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, so the first time I went, actually got to see the filming locations, see the houses where these, Lucas's house, all of that. When I first got to see all that, the River Court, when I first got to go to Screen Gems, all of that was here, beginning of season 5. But just talking about the episode in general, it was directed by Greg Prange, who, as you know, has directed many of the big episodes, and it was written by Mark Schwann, the creator of the show. This is a bit surprising, even though like Greg usually directs the big episodes. I don't understand, and I don't have a problem with it, but it's just like me kind of understanding it, because Mark directs the finales now. He directed the season 3 and season 4 finale. I'm not sure why, this is like a reinvention of the show. If I was a creator, I would be like, I'm going to direct the season 5 premiere. But he didn't. Greg Prange did, and did a pretty good job, I would say. It definitely still feels like One Tree Hill, but it feels like 5 years later. It does, and it feels different enough, but still connected to the universe, and I like that a lot. We have a reintroduction of all of our main characters. Lucas is first on the River Court, giving flashbacks or showing what happened at the end of season 4, and then jumping to now, and everything's faded on the River Court, and time has moved on. We have Lucas now. Then we go to Naley. We see Naley as well as Jamie. We are introduced to the Jamie that we're going to be spending the time, our time with on the rest of the series. Jackson Brundage. How he likes basketball, we see that, and we see that Nathan doesn't want him to play in basketball, and that some darkness is taken over Nathan, and we don't know what the situation is when we're first introduced. We just know that something bad has happened to Nathan. Then we're introduced to Brooke at Close Over Bros, this multi-million-dollar company that she now runs and is in New York. Now, clear to point out this, and I'm going to talk about it probably I guess I might have had it in my notes for the next episode. Yeah, the next episode, but I'll go ahead and talk about it in here too. So usually they film everything in Wilmington, and they just make areas in Wilmington look like whatever city they're in. So like anytime they're in New York, they don't actually go to New York, obviously. That's in Wilmington. They just make, and there's certain shots in this episode in New York, whether it be when she's in Clothes Over Bros and you see the outside, that's definitely a backdrop. That's not actually New York. There's actually, I think it's in this episode where you get a cut scene. Well, we had actual several cut scenes in this episode, and I guess it would just be this episode that we see like an overhead shot of New York. All of that looks really well and makes you, it actually was filmed in New York and it was B-roll and everything, and it looks good. It puts you in the spot. There's one shot in this episode, though, that is like B-roll from the 1970s. Like, the cars are definitely not to date, so it's weird that they chose that. I don't know why they did that. Would have taken that out. And then there's a scene with the limo where they drop that guy out with Brooke and Victoria, and they drop that guy out, and it's like this, or they pick Brooke and the guy up, both those spots, and you can tell that's in Wilmington, and they just try to make it look like New York. The same thing happened in season 3 when she went to New York. And you see people walking around. It's supposed to be like somewhere just on the street in New York. I exactly know where it's at in Wilmington. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense that they wouldn't go to New York to do this. Now, what's interesting, though, is the scenes in Los Angeles, both in this episode and in episode 2, are actually in Los Angeles, which is surprising to me. I wasn't sure with the first episode. It looked like all Los Angeles to me, the scenes with her walking about and looking at Lucas's book on the street and all this, and but I just wasn't sure because they usually don't do that. Now, of course, a lot of these people, especially the creators, I mean the actors too, they go back to Los Angeles for the summer, even though like a lot of the cast and everything have houses in Wilmington. I mean, Los Angeles is where the industry is. It's where most of the people go back during the summer. So I guess like they were just there, so they were able to just go ahead and film some of these quick scenes with Hillary Burton in Los Angeles. And when we get to episode 2, 502, it's very clear that there's a scene with her walking down the street that it is in Los Angeles. Like, you can see behind her that, and you can tell it's not a green screen, that they're actually in LA. And it's because you can see the hills and everything. It's definitely not Wilmington. So I thought that was really interesting that they actually did that. And we're able to do that because episode 2 it's a different director, and we'll get to that in a second. So I don't know if they filmed that with the episode, or if this particular scene they might have filmed all this stuff with Hillary Burton at the same time. It's a couple days in LA, probably with Greg Prange at the helm, but I don't know. Then we also have an introduction of Peyton in this one of these first scenes of her in LA. There is a shot that I don't like because it shows like Hollywood Boulevard and it zooms in on Hollywood, and it's like, okay, we get it, chill out. But the stuff with her at the record company, obviously that stuff was filmed in Wilmington, like on a soundstage, most likely, or just around and about Wilmington. Depends on probably the shot of the record company. The spot they were filming at inside there. So we get her, we get Brooke, we get introduced to these characters. So Lucas, we're not really sure about his introduction. It's pretty much just Lucas 5 years later, right? The Nathan and Haley one's different because we see the darkness in him, and something has definitely happened, but they are still married and they have a kid, and we see that. The Brooke one, she's very successful, pretty much an evolved version of Brooke. You know, she's like not letting the model get on there unless she gains weight. So she's responsible as this leader of this company. And then we see Peyton, and we realize that her dream, she's still in LA, she's still trying to make it in this music business, but it's not quite what we imagined that she would imagine as well, would be like. And then we also get Mouth as well, who's unemployed as a recent college graduate. Welcome to the club. And then, so we're quickly just dropped into the world that they are now, without having to gradually transition into it. We're brought up to speed pretty quickly. We're introduced to Victoria. Obviously, we don't know yet who she is other than her being high up in Brooke's company. Although, if you know me, I read the spoilers, so I already knew who she was. Um, Brooke, I feel like her success, if you're looking at all this stuff and what's most unrealistic, because I know when I did the tours, people talking about how successful the characters was, and I guess it was kind of unbelievable to some people. The Lucas thing is not very unbelievable to me. He's working at a high school coaching basketball. He did write a book, but we don't know the extent to his success writing that book. Like it sold really well, but it's a novel. It's not like he made $1 billion or $1 million off this book, right? So his is believable. The Nathan Haley thing, like he became a successful college basketball player and then didn't make it into the NBA. He made some money off of a shoe. I guess we would say the second most unbelievable, but I still have a pretty good belief that could have happened. This Peyton and Mal is really believable. But the Brooke one is probably the most unbelievable that her company is so big at this point. But it doesn't bother me. It doesn't take away from it. I'm fine with it. Like I said, we're introduced to Jackson Brundage as Jamie, really cute kid. A lot of things are kept in the shadows in this episode that sets it up, but we don't really get answers. For example, Karen. We know Karen and Lily are about in the world traveling, but we don't get any answers other than that. Like, you can guess what the situation is of who she's with other than Lily, but it's not answered until later on in the season. And I like that. I like that they kept that in the shadows. And it's kind of like, at the time you wonder, like, oh, how is she doing this? How is she traveling the world by only owning Trick now and not, she doesn't have Karen's Cafe anymore. I would like to know, like, when, a time frame of what happened in between those years, like, when did she stop running Karen's Cafe? When did she go back and get into this new relationship, rekindle this relationship with this person, what have you. And there's also the Rachel situation where Brooke fires Rachel, but we don't know it's Rachel. We just know it's a friend, and we're left in the shadows of who that is because it's going to come back later in the season. John is a creep, Peyton's boss. We set that up, which is it's very interesting, Mark Schwann writing this stuff, right? Because we know, I don't know when his creepiness began on the show. For all I know, it could have started in season 1. But I know that from reading stories and stuff, his behavior in season 4 of the show was pretty awful. So the fact that he's still writing creepy characters like this, but it's like, are you writing it? I don't, how can you write this? And obviously, like, the character's supposed to be bad, but then you're a creep in real life. I don't know. But one thing I don't like about this is, yes, people in the industry are like this. Definitely like this back then, because we have the Me Too movement now. Like, hopefully things are changing and whatnot, but what I don't like is I feel like a lot of times we get these storylines like this with her in LA. Obviously, it's just to get her to come back to Tree Hill, because we need the characters to come back to Tree Hill to make the story move forward. We can't have them all over the country. We couldn't told season 5 of Peyton in LA and everyone else in Tree Hill, or Brooke in New York and Peyton in LA, and just couldn't do that. They had to come back to Tree Hill to move this story forward. So we had to give reason for them not to be successful, or Peyton not to be successful in LA and need to come back. But it goes back to the thing with Brooke in New York in season 3, is these cautionary tales about bad people and higher up powers, and it's true. Like, it happens. I know it happens, but like, I don't need all the stories that you tell involving this to be cautionary tales. Because, like, would she really, realistically, would she give up being in LA to come back to Tree Hill? No, definitely not. Like, that wouldn't happen. But like I said, and it goes back to the thing is, like, sometimes you just have to let things go to move the story forward, and this is one of them. You do have potential in this episode to make Nathan the villain of the show moving forward. Like, they definitely could have done this with season 5, this revamp of the show. We know Nathan's just overall behavior. He's a good character and a good guy, but we know his hot-headedness, who his father is, and putting him back in the show at this point, and what has happened to him, you have the potential to make him the villain of the show moving forward. And I actually was curious about them doing that at the start of season 5. I'm glad they didn't overall, and they don't. But they did have the potential to do it then, and that is something that's interesting to me in the later years. Is you don't really have a villain moving forward in this show, unless you have villains, but they kind of suck, honestly. There's no real antagonist to the show anymore after season 4, with Dan was the antagonist in the high school years, and then when he comes back in the later years, he's no longer the antagonist. He's just the best character in the series. Obviously, just like the high school years, the music is on point. Fantastic. Got a lot of national music in these first 2 episodes, which is great. Really good job with that. Really good job with picking the selection to fit each scene. Not really sure why Peyton has so many copies of The Unkindness of Ravens. I know she's like still in love with Lucas and she's getting all these books, but like, I don't know, like maybe 2 copies, like a hardback and a softback, or like a limited edition or something, and then like the CD. But she has like 5 copies, and they're like, some of them are the exact same. I'm like, but you just felt like the need to go out and buy them. Like you're in LA, like I don't know. We don't know Peyton's money situation. Obviously, her dad has some money, but I don't know. Yeah, so don't know why she has so many copies of Ravens. They always kill it in the show with voiceovers, and this episode is no different. I love the voiceover, and it happens kind of twice because we have the scene with it, and it comes back at the end too, where it's Peyton talking on the phone, and the first time we see it, we don't know who she's talking to. It's obviously Brooke, but she's talking to Brooke, and then at the end it's revealed that she is talking to Brooke, and then that shows them coming back. And I love how the episode ends with both of them returning to Tree Hill and setting the story of this season in motion, truly. We're also introduced to 2 characters in this episode, and that's Lindsay and Millicent. Millicent obviously is introduced as definitely a side character in this episode. It's Brooke's assistant. But she is a character that will be on the show through the rest of the series, from season 5 to season 9. And it's not a character that I'm a huge fan of, but yeah, we'll talk about her. When she starts off in season 5, I do like her. It's just the fact that they made decisions they make with her later on that I'm not a big fan of. We're also introduced to Lindsay, which is Lucas's book editor / girlfriend, and who is only in... She appears in 2 seasons. She appears in this season and season 6, but only in season 6 for 1 episode. So she is a big part of this season, obviously. Like Nathan's hair in the flashbacks. In present day, it's a little bit too long for me, but his hair in the flashbacks was in between what it looked like in season 4 and what it looks like now. So, and honestly, what it looked like in real life, because I feel like what his hair looked like in present day with it super long, that was like extensions. Like that wasn't truly his hair. Wouldn't mind if they kept his hair that long, but that's just me. And then he obviously gets a haircut in episode 4. Then we have the fight scene. Well, actually, go back to that. I like all the new hairstyles. We have this long hair of Nathan. We end up cutting his hair short, like I said, in episode 4. Lucas's hair is back short. I really like the hairstyle they went with Brooke and with Peyton, this new evolved version of them, and I like Haley's hair a lot. Definitely a change up to make them look older and something different. I think they did a good job with all of those styles. But yeah, we have the fight scene as well that puts Nathan in the wheelchair. Very something that Nathan would have done, defending Haley, getting his hot-headedness, and he ends up getting thrown through that window and put in a wheelchair. And that's revealed in the episode in the fact that he was also going to be playing in the NBA, but when this happened, he ended up losing his shot in the NBA and putting him where he is now. So we're going to talk about this episode. I talked about this episode, and I'm also going to talk about 502, because both of these episodes went back to back. They're 2 separate episodes, but they aired the same night, January 8th, 2008, as a 2-hour series premiere, putting you back into the world. But this is essentially the pilot for the show moving forward, for the new version of One Tree Hill. And I think they did an amazing job with it, honestly. It's a really good episode. I think probably one of the best episodes of the season. Not the best episode of the season, but one of the best. Then we go into 502, Racing Like a Pro. And this episode was directed by Paul Johansson and written by Mark Schwann. So Mark definitely, would have written a lot here beginning of the season. But they let Paul direct it, which I had forgotten about. I forgot that he directed this episode, which, came, like I said, they came out as almost like a 2-part season premiere. So I think it was really cool. They chose him to do it. Like I said before, he's one of the best directors on the show. So I think it was a good decision to do that. The episode starts with Brooke visiting Lucas, and she thinks it's him. It turns out to be Lindsay. She jumps on top of. So it's Brooke and Lindsay's introduction to each other, and then Lucas walks in. Well, Lindsay makes a line, and then Lucas makes a line as well. This hasn't happened to me since college. Okay, fine with the Lindsay the line, but the fact that Lucas said that, like, what are you talking about? This hasn't happened to you since college, because we know moving forward, he dated Peyton for the first year, and then they broke up, and then him and Lindsay started dating probably about a year after that. So I guess something had to happen with you having 2 girls in that amount of time between there, but it doesn't seem believable. Seems like a weird line to me, is what I'm saying. I just don't know if this would have happened. Alice is introduced in this episode, another new character in this season, and one of the season's weak spots. The character sucks. No offense to the actress playing Alice, but the character sucks. The whole storyline with Alice and Mouth is garbage. Alice is running the news station that Mouth gets a job at, and it really just, it's set, I'm not going to get into in this video the whole stuff with Alice and Mouth, but I will get into it. But she's set up as like this bitch that is mean to Mouth, and will obviously continue into a different storyline that is just awful. Some of James Lafferty's best acting is in this episode. Obviously, a lot of his stuff with Paul Johansson is amazing. So when they have scenes together, it's great, especially their emotional stuff. But James Lafferty's acting, his storyline on his own, is the best in 5 and 6. His performance here at the beginning of season 5, being in the wheelchair, the stuff he has to go through is amazing. And then obviously in season 6 too, especially the second half of season 6, I love his performance when he's bringing it back, making that comeback in basketball that we're going to get into eventually. Although watching these first 2 episodes, it's really hard to believe this guy was going to make a comeback and end up playing in the NBA. With how bad off he is in his condition. Quinton is introduced in this episode, another new character that will be a main character of the season and the first 2 episodes of the season 6. I like what they did with Quinton later on, like towards the end of season 5 and his last few episodes on the show. I like what they did with Quinton, and I think introducing Quinton was a good decision overall, and trying to mirror him to be a younger Nathan and having these characters shape his life. With that being said, his introduction is dog shit. Like, terribly written. No offense to the actor, because I think he does a good job with Quinton. But he sexually harasses Haley, his first scene, and he does so multiple times here at the beginning. And you even have Haley come to the river court to try to convince him to change or whatever. It's like, no, this wouldn't happen. She wouldn't do this. This guy sexually harassed her. This character sucks. At this point, I know what he ends up evolving into, and the fact that Mark wrote this, and just his decision to write characters like this and think it's okay, and you're trying to mirror this person, like mirror Nathan and Quinton and stuff, and it doesn't work. Nathan didn't sexually harass anyone. He was a dick, but he wasn't a creep, just really bugs me. Bad writing. One thing I do think is interesting. This is the first time that Jamie has met Brooke and Peyton. Obviously, they've seen him when he was a baby, but this is the first time he's met them. Peyton, believable, makes sense. Well, both of them are believable, but the Peyton one makes sense. The Brooke one is like, that's your godson? Brooke is Jamie's godmother, and the first time you've seen him since he was a baby, you haven't cared to come back to Tree Hill at all. Interesting, because then Brooke and Jamie have a good relationship moving forward on the show. yeah, throughout the course of the rest of the series, and even from her involvement in this episode, which I do like their relationship, Brooke and Jamie's, from her telling him to take charge in this episode, helping him with the race car and everything. But it's like, I don't know. I kind of wish that they had a built-in relationship already, even if it wasn't much. That it wasn't the first time they had been reintroduced. Peyton, yes, but Brooke, I feel like should have seen Jamie a couple times, or you could have mentioned that she sent like birthday checks or something, right? Um, that bring that up, that she was still somewhat involved with Jamie's life, being his godmother. Another new character that's introduced in this episode is Carrie, who is obviously a big character in this season and the first few episodes of season 6. Starts off as this innocent nanny that you're not really sure what her story was going to be, and obviously as we go through the show, she turns into a fucking psycho. Um, but yeah, so she's but her introduction here is not that, and is making you believe she's an okay character. I really like the scene in this episode where Peyton takes Nathan to the hospital, and they are kind of arguing about his condition, and then she shows him kids with cancer to try to shake him out of this the mindset that he's in, and say, hey, look, you have a life that any of these kids would die for, and the sad fact is they probably will. So I think that knocks a little bit of sense into Nathan. Peyton lies to Lucas in this episode. We obviously seen their first scene back together at the end of the first episode, and he tells her that he's with somebody, who is obviously Lindsay, and that's revealed. But they see each other again in this episode, and he asked her, why didn't you come to the book signing in LA 2 years ago? Because after they broke up, which was 3 years ago, another year went by of him editing the book and everything and spending time getting closer with Lindsay. But then they were on the book tour in LA, and he invited Peyton, and Peyton did come, and that's one of these flashbacks that was actually filmed in LA. She did come to the book signing, but then she walked in and saw Lindsay kissing Lucas and decided to leave. But she doesn't tell Lucas this. She lies to Lucas and tells him in this scene that she knew they weren't meant to be, which is interesting. It makes sense that she would say this at the time, because she is hurt about the fact that Lucas did move on. But it's also interesting too, because we know Peyton moved on, and we find that out later in season 6. But Julian, trying to think clearly here, she met Julian for the first time after her and Lucas broke up, which would have been that 3-year mark. But then her and Julian actually started dating. Well, he came back into her life again a year later after the book signing. So it was that same day she goes to that book signing and sees Lucas and Lindsay is when she sees Julian for the second time, and then that's when they start their relationship. So, yeah. Can't wait till we get to Julian, because he's my second favorite character. Well, maybe. Dan's my favorite character, and then Julian and Peyton are my second and third favorite character. And I'm not ready to say who is who yet until I finish the series. Yeah, so I'll get back to you on that. And then obviously we have the fact that Lucas, they have that space at Trick that's being unused, and Lucas gives that to Peyton to start a record label there, free of rent, which is a really good scene. And we know too that ends up, that first shot actually is filmed at Trick in a certain location, but later they move that to a sound stage, and that's where that location is filmed, because I've been on that part of the set. But they have that good scene there talking, and Peyton tells him, which goes back to the start of the series. She tells him, "Your art matters," is what got me here, which is going to trigger him to start writing again. Which I love that line. Your art matters is really good. And the last two things I want to talk about in this episode is Quinton does not make the team. which is good. And honestly, the way his character was acting at the start of the series, I don't think they ever should put him on the team, but they do, but that comes later. And the final thing is we see Brooke buying a location for Close Over Bros. Jamie's with her, and then it's revealed as she pulls the paper off the door, that it's Karen's Cafe. So Karen, which we haven't, this is the first time we've seen Karen's Cafe this season, so we didn't really know if it was still open or not. Confirmation that Karen's Cafe has closed down, and the property is for sale, and that Brooke buys the property from Karen, and that's where she's going to open up her store, a new store from Tree Hill, a Close Over Bros, which I think was a good decision. But it's still a little bit weird that Karen decided to sell Karen's Cafe. I think maybe not. I mean, at this point in her life, she's gonna be, after everything that's happened to Karen, I feel like she's like, I'm gonna do whatever's gonna make me the most happy, and that's probably going to be with Andy and traveling the world. So letting Karen's Cafe go, I guess, is not unbelievable. But yeah, that's the first 2 episodes of season 5. I think here on season 5, I'm going to be talking about 2 episodes apiece instead of the normal 4, because there's a lot happening, and I don't want to this episode here is, almost 40 minutes long, and it's just about 2 episodes. So yeah, I'm going to keep it to 2 episodes for right now. We're going to change it again in the future. All right, thanks guys for checking this video out. Let me know in the comments what you think. How do you like season 5? Did you think it started well? Would you have changed things about the beginning of season 5? Comment below, let me know, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.